reel, and then we're
Mhm.
going to jump in and get started. My channel. Take me to my channel. Okay. And videos. There we are. Okay, so we are on YouTube with the correct title. Awesome. Now I'm going to dive off of that. All right, guys. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am here today with another entrepreneur interview. I am speaking with Yolanda Dégraff, and she is fantastic, first of all. Second of all, she is one of my friends that I met through the internet, which is a thing that happens a lot these days. We met in an entrepreneur group and connected through that. And then I think the next fun thing we did was our vision boards.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, we met in real life to do vision boards and have been friends ever since and stay connected, even though we don't live in the same part of Brooklyn and I'm rarely in Brooklyn. But I always love to keep in touch and see what Yolanda is up to. And recently we were chatting and she described to me, even though I've known her for forever, she told me like the journey to where she is now in her creative process. And I was so amazed at the clarity and the power of that story as you were telling it to me that I'm really excited for everybody else to hear that too, because I think it's very empowering to hear somebody else look back and say, oh, actually, it was all these seemingly random things that have led me right where I am today. And that's all that we need to do is take a step at a time. So we're going to just pretty much dive in. I would love for you, first of all, to tell me about your current creative endeavor, where people can find your creations online. And then from there, we'll just wind it back and talk a little bit about that journey that got you there.
Okay. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. It's exciting to be here. I'm a graphic designer and I'm an artisan, and I have a stationery and an invitation business that I actually run through Etsy right now. So I've had a paper focus for several years, and I discovered that interest in various paper crafting techniques through a class I took actually in high school. I don't do so much with the handmade paper making and the card making as much as I do digital work these days, but actually that was the class, the card making class, that pretty much started it all. The other class was a web design class that I took maybe a year earlier. It's hard to say, but it was still in the time of the floppy disks and such.
Wow.
And that was the class that gave me a working knowledge of Photoshop. So between those two classes during high school, have actually gotten me started. And now I don't think I could live a week without working with either of those mediums. Those are my primary mediums at this point. But in between, a whole lot of things happened.
Well, I love the fact that it's two teachers that influenced you, right? Two different classes to get into, to develop like a curiosity about a new way of creating. This is actually a conversation that Alan and I were having the other day. Because education is weird this year. Basically, we were talking about the value of education besides just teaching kids. And he was saying, you know, how many people have that memory of, well, that teacher influenced me significantly in this way. And that's totally your story. Like that teacher probably did not think that they were going to teach someone to have a card business later on in life, right? They were just doing a thing. And yet allowing creativity in the classroom led you to do this whole business.
Right.
So I want to hear about how the library fits into this, because I know that was one of your first jobs, right?
Oh, yes, pretty much. But actually, the library was where I took the web design class.
Okay.
As that was one of the community classes that was offered during that season. And so the library pretty much grew up at the library, home away from home. The books were where I could be. And I was telling someone yesterday that we had a max of books that we could take out on our cards. So once we maxed out our books, my sisters maxed out their books, we would exchange the books. And then there were books that we would, don't do this, children, if you're listening, don't do this. So we would take the books and we would hide certain books behind the other books so that we knew exactly where they were when we came back to the library.
Yep.
But being there all the time, I pretty much had a job before I started working there officially, because I would help out there, and the supervisor of the I think she was the customer rep at that point. She said, "How old are you?" She kept asking me, "How old are you? Come back and work for us when you get old enough to work here." And eventually I did that. I wasn't old enough to work officially. I started volunteering there. And yes, so I ended up working there. I worked in the children's room for a number of years, and I was a librarian assistant. And I also worked with customers in the checkout lines and such. But my most predominant place was the children's room.
And what was that experience like, just being surrounded by that every day? That's what I have an aunt who's a librarian, and I always thought, what a cool job, but I didn't want to go to library school. But I love books, right?
Mm-hmm. Being a librarian was one of my choices, or things that I said, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? A librarian was one of, I wanted to be a librarian. I wanted to be a museum curator. There were a couple of different things. I think I thought that being a librarian would mean that I would have more of a chance to read as many books that I wanted and to collect the books that I wanted. It's not really that way, because you're finding books for other people to read, but at the same time, it gives you the opportunity to see new things that are coming in, and also you feel good when you recommend something to someone and that person really likes it and starts a whole new series just because you said that it was a good book. That's exciting. And I had children coming in. I was not much more than a child myself, but I had children coming in. They would sit down at the tables right after school. Some of the children, they didn't go home. They came straight from school, and they were there until we closed. And they left not because their parents were home, but because they had to leave because we were closing. So we had a different sort of community, in that we were a community, but there was a community within that community in that children's room. And we had different programs that took place, and we had homework help. I would help with homework. We would do art projects. I would read to the children sometimes. I would put books away. I would take books out. No day was ever the same. Yeah. But at the beginning and at the end of each shift, it was books and it was children. And that was not really something that I thought I would be interested in, children, because when I was younger, I would be put in charge of watching certain children in different groups because of our parents were in meetings, and whoever was the oldest had to watch the children. And for a while, I was one of the younger ones causing trouble for the teenagers. But then when it became my turn, I was like, that's it. I don't want anything to do with children. And I had no idea that I was going to be immersed in children. Yes. I thought I was going there for the books, and ended up being there for more than books.
And so now you're immersed in books and children still, even though you're not at the library. So tell me about that.
Okay, so 2009, I believe it was, I started working at a school within the same community as the library, but I was supposed to be assisting the kindergarten teacher. And what happened was that the kindergarten teacher became indisposed, and I ended up having to take over the class. So I was working with the children at the library, and I was also working with the children in the classroom setting, where I was with these 5-year-olds and 4 almost 5s and some 6-year-olds, and we would do singing, we would do letter sounds, we would do all sorts of things throughout the day. I would finish with them at 1:30. I would leave them, and then I would go back to what I also did at that point in time. I did that for several years, back and forth with them. And then there became a time where the two jobs kind of crossed over, where I was taking things that I learned from one set and carrying them over to the other place. And then vice versa, I would take books that I discovered there and then took them back to the classroom to use in the unit studies and to use in the different lesson plans that we had. And then I liked to read, so it was an excuse for me to read as well, but I was reading to them and fostering a love for books and reading in them as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. I had teachers that read to us, and I remember particularly my mom used to read to us, and that's just like one of the best things about childhood to me is that discovery of worlds of ideas through books. So I know while you were teaching, you were also getting to implement some of that design too, right? Didn't you basically become the school designer?
I pretty much was. The administrator said he was going to hang a plaque over my door, but I had things coming to my desk. So any flyers that had to go out at that point in time, they came to me. I would do those. I would send them back upstairs. I would send them the files, and it's like, good to go. I did yearbooks or like memory journals and such. I did different posters. advertisements. So I was working in a school setting and in a library setting, but still utilizing creative skills.
Yeah. And so then from there, you're doing all of these things. Recently, I guess last year, you took on another educational experience for yourself so that you could learn more about design. So what was that? You were doing it, was it internship?
Yes, I did an internship with a surface designer. And she told me that she didn't think, because I said, oh, I have graphic design background. So she's looking, she said, I'm doing surface designs, I'm doing patterns for textiles. And I said, yes, that's fine. I just wanted to experience another setting. So what she was doing and what I ended up doing as well, traditional watercolor paintings. Once those are done, they're digitized. So either scanned, take the photo, put them on the Photoshop or Illustrator, depending on which versions that we needed. And then we would do what we had to do with those, change the colors or take things here, move them around. And once those are done, she finalizes whatever she's doing and they get printed on fabrics. Those fabrics are printed and clothing is made. Fabrics for upholstery is made. It's so cool. It's so fascinating to actually be able to wear something that you had a part in is very amazing.
Yeah. That's so cool. I had a brief second when I was still doing illustration that I had some of my watercolor and ink pictures turned into a bag and a couple of T-shirts. Mm-hmm. And now I still wear them. I actually was wearing one yesterday. And it's always such a fun feeling, yes. Right? Like I literally made this thing. And then when people compliment you, you're like, yeah, I did it. It's such a fun thing. And also, it sounds like I would love that internship. That whole thing sounds amazing. And I've always wished I knew more about that process of art into digital, back into art. Right. So fascinating. But I know when you were there, she really encouraged you to kind of up what you thought you could do in terms of your own design business, right?
Yes, she did, because at first I was doing a couple of basic things for her and she felt that I could do more, but then she didn't want to put things on me that I was said, you're not here for all that. But she was great. She's a beautiful person and I loved working with her, and she started letting me do things on my own. And she would also encourage, she was not one of those people who want you to stay within the certain realm and only help them. She wanted me to expand for what I could do. So I was able, through what I learned with her, to recognize that hold on a second. I don't have to go to Michael's and buy papers and then be limited by whatever is in stock. Not necessarily Michael's, any other venue, but I can design for my customers, for my clients, for myself, things that are meaningful to me and to us, that fit our schemes, that fit our themes, that fit the character that we want to portray. And there we go. Brand new designs to make whatever it is.
Yeah. So no longer literal start to finish.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. I can't wait to see, like, I've got to see like all of the things, because I would love to see that before and after that, like kind of, where you were, and then the aha moment and what you're doing now and what you're going to continue to do. So what I want to know is, we chatted about this and you explained your whole journey, like all of these pieces that go into where you are with Silver Cloud Delights right now. So, and I put down there for you guys, check it out, silverclouddelights.net will take you to the shop so you can view Yolanda's designs. Did you have a sense that you were headed in a direction, or was it more like, oh, that's what happened? All those things led to here.
Okay, so I said I wanted to be a librarian. I said I wanted to be a museum curator. But by the time I was in high school, I thought for sure and certain I was going to be an interior designer. I was going to flip houses. That was the plan. Am I flipping houses now? Absolutely not. Yet at the same time, it's so strange, because at one point I was so frustrated with myself. Like, this is not how it's supposed to be going. I'm not supposed to be doing this right now. But now looking back, that was exactly what I was supposed to be doing to get to where I needed to go. Because if that was not the case, I would not have gotten to where I am. So the thing is, when I look back at the things that I was introduced to or immersed in when I was smaller, I would say that my whole life has come full circle, because even though I'm now realizing how all the pieces interconnected, and actually looking back, that is pretty amazing. If I look back and say, this is what I was doing this at this point in time, and if I wasn't doing this, then that there would not have happened.
Yeah.
So the different things, they do relate. And even with the teaching thing, I never imagined that I would be in a classroom with children. And I never imagined that I would enjoy it and I would love that time with them. I mean, I said, because for me, it was, okay, let me do some creative things, and I'm doing this for now. But even though certain things are for a certain season, they're also part of the preparation to what the future holds.
Yeah. So what advice would you have for someone who's in the midst of that process? They really want to be creative and they feel like they're kind of working at it, but it's on the side and all this other stuff is going on in life. Do you have any advice for the person in the middle there?
Okay, so basically you have to stay open-minded. Yes, you're going to plan, but you don't want to be so streamlined that you close your eyes to other opportunities, because the inspiration comes in so many ways. If you say, no, I can't do that, I have to stay here, you're going to say no to something that's going to be a great opportunity for you. Mm-hmm. So the thing is, the journey is, you have to enjoy the journey. If you are so focused on the end that you don't enjoy the journey, there was no purpose for you. There was no purpose. So if there are unexpected trails that open up, follow them. They probably circumvent and they go back to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then if you don't know what you want to do, and you have some idea of what you are doing and you're not sure where it's going to lead, I just say, stick with what you know, and then the things that you don't know, you will learn as you go on, and then seek counsel from those who do know.
Yeah.
And then learn when to let go. Sometimes we hold things so tightly to ourselves and we're hindering ourselves. But if we just let go, relax, that's when the freedom to be comes about. Yeah.
So I want to talk about letting go, because I know that you are making a shift in your life where you're putting more emphasis on your business, right, instead of the teaching piece of it. So one thing that you created this year was really kind of like your final testament, your final, big project for while you were a teacher. And I want you to tell everyone about that, because it is literally the most amazing document I've ever seen.
Okay. That I was like, okay. I think we had a meeting. I believe it was end of May, maybe.
Yeah.
Thereabouts. And we were talking about the things that were going on in our community and what we could do to help, etc., especially in the terms of the racial divide and diversity being needed, and acceptance and love being needed for all of us to have a good community. And the next morning I woke up and Erin was talking about letting her know about different resources, just so that she can compile them and send them on. I think Alan was going to send that out. And I said, okay, let me just make a list of some of the books that I've used, because I had mentioned that I had some books that I used in my classroom. I said, let me just make a list of those and I'll just send them to Alan or Erin so that they can be part of the resources. 2 days later, this list is not happening right now. So I said, hopefully they're not waiting for me. I'm going to be the holdup here. But I started writing down all the books that I had on the bookshelf, because I have my books organized, even though at that point in time we were no longer in the classroom because everything has shut down. I have the virtual library. I could just go in and see all the books on my shelf. So I did that, pulled off all the titles, and I wrote this, and I said, well, I can't put these books and not put those books. So then I ended up adding books to the list from what I remembered from my time working in the library. Then I said, oh, but I can't put those books and not put these books, because these books are also part of the series. So then I ended up adding books that were part of the series. And then the next thing you know, I said, you know what? I want to add all the books that I remember from my childhood growing up. There were a couple I could not remember the names, and I could not remember. I knew what the story's about, couldn't remember the author or the title. So I don't have those, but I took out my notebook, started writing. I had a whole page with 3 columns going down, flipped over, kept writing. Every time I input to the document, I erased the page and I started again, and the list never ended. I had to put a cap on it. So this has got to stop. They're going to think I'm not really making a list. So I'm saying this, and I'm saying the list is coming, the project is happening. But it was And then I said, you know what, this is my final testament, because I said, this is a lot of what I have collected over the last few years, and not going to be teaching anymore because I am going to do other things. But at the same time, I don't want to have nothing. I mean, I do have things to show for that time there, but I think this project is going to be the last, I guess, the final solid piece, the final testament. That's what I was calling it.
Yeah.
The first part of my life. Yeah, I guess you'd say.
And so it's like 500 books, isn't it?
I didn't count them. I first I was like, oh, it's like 100 books, but it's 100 pages, and I think there are about 5 titles on each page. So maybe, yeah, it's like
all I know is you said, Erin, I'm going to make this list and I'm going to send it to you. I'm like, great. I'm thinking like 25 books is going to be amazing. And so I have a sister who has a degree in childhood development. She has a young son and another one on the way. She used to be a young childhood teacher. Now she's a stay-at-home mom, and she loves this type of thing. I was like, Olivia's going to love this. So I'm just thinking, like, you're going to send me the list, and I'm going to send it to Olivia and anyone else that I can think of that could use it. And then you sent me the list, and I was like, what the heck? This is so many books. This is incredible. Like do you talk about resource? It is the resource. And so I was like, well, we have to tell more people about this than just my sister and my friends that I know that have kids. Like, there's got to be a way. So I really wanted to put this on the YouTube channel so that it's a place people can see it here, and a way that you can easily share it, and we can get it to people who have an interest in being able to share this literature. And it would take forever for them to go digging for this. Right. So what I would love for you to share is your personal experience in the classroom and kind of how that made you realize that this literature was so important.
Okay. So I found over the course of the years, what I don't normally work with one age group, but when I first started, I was in the kindergarten. And what happens is the children, their innocence is there. And what we put on them is what they send to others. So many times they would be playing with each other, their different role plays, and I would watch them and I would listen to them, and I would realize that they considered the beauty that they saw in themselves and in others based on not what was character or on the inside, but they were judging that based on outward appearances. And I came across a book while I was at the library still, and it's called Shades of People. So I was using that book. That was basically the first one I picked up, and I used that to show them that beauty comes in all different types. There's not one pigeonhole for what beautiful is or what pretty is. But then as I continued, I realized that it wasn't them, because if left alone, they're all friends. They're all playing together. They don't understand that this and this can't work because whatever. We put those things on them. And I realized that if we can start from very early to teach them to celebrate the differences that are in the world, both on the inside and on the outside, that they will be able to be stronger as people, and they will be adults that can also pass that on. Because it's one thing for me at a certain age to say, okay, I'm going to become this. I have to make a definite decision to change and to become. As children, they just absorb. So let them absorb the positive, and that way it's inside of them so they can shed that light to others. So I started taking books and putting that as part of the lessons, or adding them to the book that I was reading to them, and let those be that what they heard and what was part of their normal surroundings. Because a lot of times things are there, but if it's not focused on or not brought to attention, then it's overlooked. And what we make important to them is what will be important to them.
Yeah. And I love that you weren't just reading them like little kid books. Sometimes it would be, what do you call that? Not fiction. The other
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction. Sometimes you would read them nonfiction, right? Just a little bit at a time.
Right.
And what's their response to some of the things that happened in the world throughout history?
My goodness. Okay, so with the nonfiction, some, because left to themselves, or most of the times they won't choose nonfiction. It's not interesting, but the way we present it, and then sometimes they're so shocked that did that really happen? And yes, this really happened to people like you and to people like me, to people. It's like in another place, not too far from here. But sometimes we read about places that were far away, and sometimes the things that we read were upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then some of the settings that we have sometimes is places they know. So they're reading, reading to them, and they're finding out that these things really happen. Some of them are appalled, like, if they knew me, I would do this and I would do that. Like, you wouldn't be able to do all those things. So they get really excited about certain things, but just the awakening to things that they didn't realize or didn't know. Sometimes we, even as adults, we limit ourselves to our own circles, and we think that all we see and all we know is all that there is. So
Right.
exposure to other things, when we realize that other things are going on and that other things have affected certain people in various ways, that makes us compassionate and engenders empathy. And it makes us also awakened to the fact that this happens, and let me not be a part of the hindrance, but part of the change to make the place of the world a better place.
Yeah, I love that. And so the reason I titled this Learning from the Creative Process is because that was your whole life journey. You are a learner, clearly. You love to learn things. But also it's helping children to learn through the creative process of other people. I mean, other people, those books exist because somebody wrote them.
Right.
Which is incredible in the first place, right? And then the fact that now that exists, that book is a resource, and your list is a resource of resources for children of continuing generations to have more and more access to their own history, the history of other people, the history of the world, right? And also just ideas, love,
Right.
community. And so what I'd love to know is that the book list is a resource list that, like, it makes total sense if you're a teacher, right, to have that resource, or a librarian. What are some ways that other people might go about using this list?
Okay, so the list I try to make it as effective as possible, where you have to do the least amount of digging. So everything is there. So you have the summary, so you can look at the list, scroll through. I have two sections. It's mostly all juvenile literature, but the children's section, and then young adults, and then a couple of pieces that we used in conjunction with curriculum are in there, and then anything that's not children is marked so that the children don't accidentally read it. But if you have children who read everything, and you as a parent or an educator know that child is okay with that, then that's fine. But I have ISBNs there, so if you want to look them up and find them in your bookstore, in your library, etc., that's there. I would say, even if you're not a child, read these books. These books are so amazing. The illustrations in some of them, sometimes the books, just the illustrations alone without the words, those are works of art.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a child to enjoy children's books. I love children's books, and then read them to somebody you know.
Mm-hmm. I see a YouTube channel here. Suddenly, I see the YouTube channel full of Yolanda reading these books on YouTube. I'm just saying, I have no idea if there's legal rights around that, but I'm just saying it's in my head now. So the question I was going to ask you, and we're going to run out of time here, but I wanted to ask you, and I did the other day, if you've ever thought about writing a children's book. And it turns out that you kind of have.
Yeah.
And so give me the baby version of this children's book that was your second Final Testament.
Okay, so last year around November, December, my children started writing their own book. I'm the editor, they're the authors and illustrators. And reading that book, if you don't know them, you won't recognize things from their lives, but basically their whole lives during that period of time is in that book. Yeah. So as they're writing this book, they had different teams, they wrote different segments. And then once the writing was done, the illustration team got started. And as the illustrators are illustrating, they want to know from the writers, who is this person? What does this person do? And are these people Black? I said, what? Excuse me. So the question was posed, and the answer was yes, but Like, why the but? Like, what's going on? Again, they're seeing, they want the people in their book to be beautiful. They want the people to be pretty, but they think that being Black means they cannot be. They want them to have long, beautiful hair. They want them to have light blue eyes. On and on and on the things go. So we had to have another discussion. We had to pull those papers back out, celebrating our differences and why the beauty of a person has nothing to do with skin color, hair texture, eye color, and on and on and on. So it's an ongoing thing, ever learning, but at the same time, sometimes you have to repeat these things.
Yeah, because it's deep in there, right? I mean, if it was easy, they wouldn't have brought that up.
Right.
If it was easy to go through the first time. Well, I love that because you've been teaching them through other people's books, and then you got the chance to teach them through their own creative process, through their own book, which is just like a totally different thing. And I know that there are going to be kids that were in your class that did that process, that later they're telling somebody their story and they're like, and then one year we did this book and that totally made me think blah, 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 right? Like you're going to be that teacher that is changing their lives. And that's just so amazing. It's amazing to feel that yourself, but I know it's important to hear other people say that. So I'm telling you, you're changing people's lives. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for serving the little ones and making a difference. I always wanted to be a teacher when I was a kid. And then obviously I didn't. And then you didn't want to be, and you ended up being. Yeah. So that's such an amazingly important part of being human is that learning process. Mm-hmm. So what are there any other parting thoughts that you have for people, either as they're using this list or just things that you've learned that you want to share with people?
Well, again, I guess I'll go back to the open-mindedness, and that is so important because I know as creatives, people tell us that we're free-spirited, and yes, we are free-spirited, but we know the control that we hold over things, that we hold things very, very tightly to ourselves. And sometimes it's hard, very hard, to release the control and to release the plans of what we think should be. So whether it is job searching, whether it is a particular project, whether it is any part of your creative process, it's important to listen to what's happening. Stay in tune with what's happening. Listen to the inspiration that is around you. I was working on a project the other day and it's like, well, how do you know what to do? I say, oh, I listen to the materials. They tell me what they want. So pay attention to what's happening, and it's not going to necessarily look the way you envisioned, but it will be better because you didn't know exactly what you should have envisioned.
Yeah, it's that messy part in the middle, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the scary, beautiful part in the middle where you have no idea what's happening, but you're going with the flow. And then in the end, you're like, yes, that's what I meant to do.
Exactly, exactly.
Oh, man, that's amazing. So do you have, for your design shop, do you have new things coming soon? What's the best way for people to stay connected for that?
Well, I have some more that I'm releasing in the next coming weeks because we have holiday season coming up.
Yeah.
And I also have some projects. If you have any projects that you need done and you don't see them there, just contact me. On that same page, you'll see a contact button. Just hit that, send me a message. And I do work with private projects, not necessarily what's there. And if you subscribe to the email, I will let you know what's going on. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So when they download that, the book project, they'll get on your email list too, right? So you'll give them any updates on that and any updates on the designs.
Yes,
so that's
absolutely.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I've been excited about this for weeks. Yes. And I'm glad we finally got a time that worked for both of us to come and chat about all these things. I think it's one of the reasons I want to have so many different people who are in this creative entrepreneurial field is because everyone's experience is unique. And within that, each of you are going to speak to somebody that watches this video and they're going to be like, that's me. And she's done this. And so I can do this too. And so I would encourage everybody, if you have a question or if you want to reach out to check in with Yolanda, because Yolanda is an amazing human and also would love to be your friend around social media. So definitely stay connected with her. And I need to see this children's book when it comes out too. So maybe part 2 when we get to see the children's book.
No, leave it to Erin. She'll be having me doing projects till kingdom come.
No, let's go. Let's go. Oh my goodness. Well, I love you so much. Thank you for being on here. Thank you for helping me to show another piece of that entrepreneurial world that we live in. And thank you for putting together the world's most amazing list of books and the Living Heritage Book Project. And you guys go download that. I'm going to put the link in the description as well, so it's easy to click through.
Well, thank you, Erin, so much. You inspire me. You don't know how much you've been a great asset to me as well.
Well, thank you. I'm honored. All right, guys. Well, we will see you sometime soon for another video. And until then, y'all have a fantastic rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye.